weekend of NFL playoffs is in the books. More teams have been eliminated. We are currently heading towards championship week as of this recording. And as you can see by the board behind me, a lot of the head coaching vacancies are getting filled. So we only have 2 left by my count, the Texans and the Eagles. And today I sort of wanted to discuss both the head coaching hirings we've seen thus far and just sort of go over in, a small amount of detail what I think of those. And then I want to point out what I believe could be the beginning of a historical domino effect that's going to benefit Minnesota in the coming years. So let's begin with the head coaching hiring so far around the league. And we start with the New York Jets, who I believe probably got one of the best new situations going for them with Robert Saleh from the 49ers. As you can see, how I have it here on the board is the head coach in question, their new team, and where they came from. And then behind me, we have a word bank of head coaches that are currently being interviewed or have interviews scheduled that haven't been hired yet. And that will come into play here at the end. So first, we've had Robert Saleh with the New York Jets, who makes the incredibly good decision right off the bat to bring Mike LaFleur over from San Francisco to be the offensive coordinator. And LaFleur was the quarterback's coach and the passing game coordinator for the 49ers. And if he can make Nick Mullins look good, in a Kyle Shanahan offense, then I think that there's probably some hope if they decide to retain Sam Darnold or if they go through Zach Wilson or Justin Fields in the NFL draft. So this inspires confidence in me already that the New York Jets are going to be able to turn this thing around. Not maybe all in one season, but they're really laying the foundation for this to be a good franchise in the future. And I think I think Saleh is a critical hire because he's going to be able to poach a lot of what he learned from the Kyle Shanahan offense, from his time in San Francisco, and also just players in general that he's going to be able to bring over to his new team. Next on the list, we have Dan Campbell, who after losing, after the Saints lost this past weekend, is now officially the head coach of the Detroit Lions. I went on the Lions subreddit on Reddit, and there seems to be a 50-50 split, but mostly the fans are not really too thrilled about this, and I guess I can understand why. It's not the most intriguing hire, if you will. I'm not really sure what Dan Campbell brings to the table that nobody else has so far. But we got to give it time, see how it plays out. The Lions have a lot of rebuilding to do. He's basically going to be starting from scratch because, there's some promising young talent on the team like Kenny Golladay and Jeffrey Okudah. But Okudah was hurt most of last year, and Kenny Golladay is a free agent. So, this could be just a transitional period for the Detroit Lions while they try to build up a franchise that is basically just treading water. He comes over from the Saints, as mentioned, and he might be able to poach a lot of the talent from the Saints, so that could be a critical point to this because, let's face it, the Saints are facing salary cap purgatory. They're already $100 million over. They're going to shed a lot of talent next year. Maybe he convinces some of those players to follow him to Detroit. Next, we have Urban Meyer coming out of retirement to coach the Jaguars, which is... It's an intriguing hire because he's going to get Trevor Lawrence. They own the number 1 overall pick. They have a lot of interesting offensive weapons. And the one that strikes me as the best player-coach marriage that we're going to see this in this new season is going to be Urban Meyer with Laviska Shenault Jr. Because if you remember, during his time at Florida, he had a guy by the name of Percy Harvin who turned out to be an incredible weapon, especially at the next level once he got to the Minnesota Vikings. So could he be the NFL version of Urban Meyer's Percy Harvin in college at Florida? Maybe. He's got the skill set for it. Plus they're also going to have, James Robinson, DJ Chark, there's a lot. They have a ton of cap space, a ton of draft capital. I think they're in good hands with Urban Meyer, depending on how he handles losing more than once a year. Moving on to the Falcons with Arthur Smith. I think this is a pretty much slam dunk hire, but it doesn't really they're going from Dan Quinn, who was a defensive guy, to Arthur Smith, who is an offensive play caller. So that is the transition that I would like to see the Vikings make one day. And he's got a very talented roster, a very talented offense. The defense is questionable at best, but I think that there's a lot that Arthur Smith can take and mold into his own coming over from the Titans. And last but not least, this is where I think the Vikings' fortunes begin to change because the Chargers opted to hire Brandon Staley, the former Rams defensive coordinator, to take over as head coach in 2021. Now, this was one of the best job openings on the market that nobody really talked about. Everybody talked about the Jaguars being, one of the best places. The Jets was desirable because they have draft capital. But even the Falcons with Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, you wouldn't have to work very hard to build up a foundation. It's basically already there. But the Chargers, man, have Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, just a lot of great offensive pieces. The offensive line needs to be rebuilt a little bit. And then on defense, you've got Joey Bosa, you've got Derwin James, you got Kenneth Murray. There's a lot of talent that is going to be able to be utilized by whoever takes over, and that guy's going to be Brandon Staley. So I'm 50-50 split on this from a personal standpoint, because he's a defensive guy. I would rather see offensive play callers be head coaches because, A, that's the way that the modern NFL works nowadays, and B, you're not getting your offensive coordinator poached every single year to go be a head coach somewhere else. So, but why this is significant for the Vikings is because Brian Daboll, the offensive coordinator for Buffalo, wanted this job. And once this job was filled by somebody else, he decided that I'm going to stay in Buffalo for another year, and I will be a head coach candidate to headline the head coaching candidates in 2022. So he's going to stay with Buffalo. And that's significant because let's be honest. Mike Zimmer is basically facing this year now a prove-it year. It's going to be season number 8, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think we can all agree that after 7 years of one and done in the playoffs and just not being able to get over the hump, especially in a year where, he's going to get all of his guys back from injury. Remember, his guys, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, which is a weird one because he only missed 4 games. Daniil Hunter, supposedly, if we can afford it. This is going to be does your formula, does your philosophy work? And this is going to be the year that they have to prove it, because there's going to be no excuses this season. They have the offensive talent to do it. The unfortunate situation is that their offensive philosophy is stuck in 1992. So let's pretend, because it's fun to pretend, let's pretend the Vikings season goes south again and Mike Zimmer gets fired. Brian Daboll will still be a candidate available to hire next season, and he was on my short list of candidates that I would have hired had Mike Zimmer been fired now. If you go back after the Week 5 loss to Atlanta, I did a video about who could potentially be the new head coach of the Minnesota Vikings if Mike Zimmer were to get canned. And at that point in the season, we were all thinking of the future. We weren't thinking of 7-9 and picking 14th in the draft. We were thinking top 5 pick and a regime change. So that's why I made that video. Brian Daboll was on my short list. Also on my short list was Arthur Smith. And another guy who is not been hired yet is Eric Bieniemy. So we are witnessing what I believe is a domino effect that is slowly but surely taking place, because Brian Daboll will be available to be a head coach next year if he decides to do that. And so far, Eric Bieniemy also looks like he might be another head coach candidate that doesn't get hired this season for 2022. So, but there's still 2 job openings, so we have to go over that. So we have the Texans, we have the Eagles. Both of those are not desirable. Nobody wants to take these positions. I believe that there was actually one candidate whose name I forget was offered an interview for the Texans job, and he turned it down. So what we have left is the guys behind me. You probably can't see it too well because of the way the camera's angled, but we have Eric Bieniemy, who has been so far taking interviews from the Lions, Chargers, Falcons, Jaguars, all filled, and the Houston Texans. I believe that interview is scheduled because of, the rules with him still being alive in the playoffs with the Chiefs. So that has to wait for it to manifest itself. Another candidate, Joe Brady. He's interviewed with the Chargers, Eagles, Jets, Falcons, all those positions filled. The only other position that he is scheduled or has interviewed with is the Texans. That's another offensive coordinator candidate. You probably know him from Carolina Panthers, who made Robbie Anderson and that offense look damn good this year without Christian McCaffrey. Another candidate out there, Todd Bowles, has either interviewed or is scheduled to interview with the Eagles. Jim Caldwell has been connected with the Texans. Marvin Lewis has been connected with the Texans. And Gerard Mayo has been connected with the Eagles. So there is some competition out there for these last 2 jobs for Eric Bieniemy to potentially not get hired this season and to be a candidate to get hired next season. So let's just take Brian Daboll off the list because he has expressed no interest in anything. One of the more recent candidates to be interviewed by the Eagles, or at least connected to the Eagles, has been Josh McDaniels. That is potentially, if I could actually get it in frame here, which, isn't going to work out too well, is potentially a situation that could become reality. Then you also have the other candidates for the Texans, Eric Bieniemy, Joe Brady, Jim Caldwell strikes me as a big-time transitional. I don't care what the roster is. I would just, take over the reins and get you to 9-7 a couple of seasons. Jim Caldwell strikes me as that kind of head coach, at least at this point in his career. Same thing with Marvin Lewis. Marvin Lewis and Jim Caldwell are going to come in with big time experience, be able to not necessarily right the ship, but do enough to maybe be competitive. Maybe this could be a Ron Rivera situation. I think Ron Rivera is better suited to do those type of things, as we've seen this year in Washington. But Jim Caldwell, I think, would be a better candidate over Marvin Lewis to sort of, take over that role as a transitional head coach, if you will. And maybe if he's successful enough, he could actually stay there. Todd Bowles has been connected to the Eagles, which is an interesting one. They're still alive. I don't have a lot of room on the board to really, I didn't even put that in camera frame. Todd Bowles has been connected to the Eagles, so that's another one that we could sort of figure that is going to get a transitional head coach. The Eagles is just an absolute mess. I don't know what to do with that team. So, but, that's kind of where we're at right now. It's going to depend a lot on how much longer the Chiefs are going to be alive in the playoffs. They face the Bills this week, and whether or not they win the Super Bowl. And will Eric Bieniemy even get hired? Will he be passed over for another year? But if you're a Vikings fan, this is some good news, because Brian Daboll is going to be available, and Eric Bieniemy, as of right now, could be available as well, because these last two jobs are not intriguing for just about anyone. So that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.